Welcome, my friends, to a place where we share inspiration and positivity. Thank you for choosing our video on Battle of Arras 1914. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. The Battle of Arras, also known as the First Battle of Arras, was an attempt by the French army to outflank the German army, which was attempting to do the same thing during the race to the sea. The reciprocal attempt by both sides to exploit conditions created during the First Battle of the Aisne. At the First Battle of Picardy, each side had attacked expecting to advance round an open northern flank and found instead that troops had arrived from further south and extended the flank northwards. The 10th Army, led by General Louis Maud'huy, attacked advancing German forces on 1 October and reached Douai, where the 6th Army under Crown Prince Rupprecht counter-attacked, as 3 corps of the German 1st, 2nd and 7th Armies attacked further south. The French were forced to withdraw towards Arras and Lens was occupied by German forces on 4 October. Attempts to encircle Arras from the north were defeated and both sides used reinforcements to try another flanking move further north. At the Battle of La Bassée, the reciprocal flanking moves ended in Flanders, when both sides reached the North Sea coast and then attempted breakthrough attacks during the First Battle of Flanders. Get ready for a captivating exploration as we unravel the layers of strategic developments and their profound significance. On 28 September, Falkenhayn ordered that all available troops were to be transferred to the 6th Army for an offensive on the existing northern flank by the 4th Guard and I Bavarian Corps near Arras, an offensive by the I Cavalry Corps on the right flank of the 6th Army across Flanders to the coast, and an acceleration of the operations at the siege of Antwerp before it could be reinforced. Rupprecht intended to halt the advance of the French on the west side of Arras and conduct an enveloping attack around the north of the city. Turning our focus to Battle of Albert, September, let's explore its key elements. On 21 September, Falkenhayn had decided to concentrate the 6th Army near Amiens to attack westwards to the coast and then envelop the French northern flank south of the Somme. The offensive by the French 2nd Army forced Falkenhayn to divert the XXI Corps and I Bavarian Corps as soon as they arrived to extend the front northwards from Chauny to Perrin on 24 September and drive the French back over the Somme. On 26 September, the 2nd Army dug in on a line from La Cygnie to Roye and Bray-sur-Somme, and German cavalry moved north to enable the I Bavarian Corps to occupy the ground north of the Somme. On 27 September, the German cavalry Georg von der Marwitz drove back the 61st and 62nd Reserve Divisions of General Joseph Brugger, who had replaced General Albert Samade, to clear the front for the XIV Reserve Corps to link with the right flank of the I Bavarian Corps. The French began to assemble at Arras, and Maud'huy found that instead of making another attempt to get round the German flank, it was menaced by a German offensive. The I Bavarian and XIV Reserve Corps pushed back a French territorial division from Bapaume and advanced towards Bray-sur-Somme and Albert. From the French XXI and X Corps north of the Somme, with support on the right flank by the 81st, 82nd, 84th and 88th Territorial Divisions, Brugger and the 1st, 3rd, 5th and 10th Cavalry Divisions of the Cavalry Corps General Conny to the south-east of Arras defended the approaches to Albert. On 28 September, the French were able to stop the German advance on a line from Marquet to Friquet and Thiepval. The German cavalry was stopped near Arras by the French cavalry. On 29 September, Joffre added X Corps, which was at Acqui, north of Amiens, the Cavalry Corps, which was southeast of Arras, and a provisional corps under General Victor d'Urbal of the 70th and 77th Reserve Divisions, one in Arras and the other in Lens, to the new 10th Army. Let's now turn our gaze towards 30 September 1 October and explore the fascinating connections it has to offer. A French division arrived at Arras on 30 September and repulsed a German attack at the Cojol River and high ground near Monchy-le-Preux on 1 October. The French were then slowly pushed back from Goume, Wancourt and Monchy-le-Preux until the arrival of X Corps. The French XI Corps was withdrawn from the 9th Army and sent to Amiens. By 1 October 2 more corps, 3 infantry and 2 cavalry divisions had been sent northwards to Amiens, Arras, Lens and Lille, which increased the 2nd Army to 8 corps along the front of. Joffre ordered Castelnau to cease attempts to outflank the Germans opposite and operate defensively. From the northern corps of the 2nd Army and the territorial and cavalry divisions nearby, Joffre created under the command of General Maud'huy. They advanced on Arras, with the gap south to the 2nd Army, held by the territorial divisions. Maud'huy was ready to begin an attack to the southeast past Arras and Lens, under the impression that there was opposed only by a cavalry screen, rather than 3 German corps which were preparing to attack. The westward advance of the XIV Reserve Corps from Bapaume to Albert and Amiens was stopped by French troops east of Albert. 5 German cavalry divisions further north were also confronted by French cavalry and infantry, while attempting to guard the XIV Reserve Corps flank. French reinforcements increased the possibility of a reciprocal French outflanking maneuver. Agents reported the massing of French and British troops between Arras and Lille, and that the railways between Lille, Douai and Arras had been protected by an outpost line from Orchies to Douai and Arras. The 1st Guard Division and IV Corps were moved to the northern flank of the XIV Reserve Corps to allow some of the cavalry divisions to redeploy. The Bavarian Reserve Corps General Karl von Fassbender was withdrawn from Lorraine and moved to Cambrai and Valenciennes, intended to advance from Douai in another attempt to outflank the French. The corps began to reach Artois on 30 September and before noon was ordered to advance with all of the units which had arrived to reach Douai before dark. 5 battalions of the 1st Bavarian Reserve Division advanced northwest from Cambrai, and parts of the 5th Bavarian Reserve Division left Dinant heading westwards, also for Douai. The 5th Bavarian Reserve Division advance was stopped by French troops at Luard, short of Douai, until the village was captured in the evening, after which the division stopped for the night. The 1st Bavarian Reserve Division battalions also came within of Douai, after overcoming French troops at Cantine and Roquette. Behind the advanced battalions, the rest of the corps arrived during the day. Both divisions were ordered to capture the town next day and occupy high ground to the west. The inner units were to pin down French troops in Douai, as the flanking units encircled the town and met at Esquerchin to the northwest. The envelopment failed, due to the distance to be travelled and the resistance of French skirmishers, which delayed the German advance. Douai was captured by nightfall and prisoners were collected by 2 October, mainly from territorial regiments. Allegations that civilians had fired at German troops led to the town being fined. The Guard, IV and I Bavarian Corps assembled on a line from Arras to Douai, opposite the territorial divisions of General Brugge, and attacked on 1 October, forestalling the attack being prepared by the. Now, let's dig deeper into 2 October and unveil the hidden treasures it holds within. The advance resumed on 2 October, with the 1st Bavarian Reserve Division in the south, attacking through Brebieres to Street Laurent, and the 5th Bavarian Reserve Division to advance via Aisne and Épée to Bailleul-sur-Berthault. It was known that the French 70th Reserve Division was moving southeast, also towards Bailleul and Lens. The French advanced with a left flank guard facing Douai to link with the 77th Division at Gavrelle and Frasnes. The French divisions had been rushed from the Vosges and were also deployed at short notice. A brigade of the 70th Reserve Division moved towards Frasnes and one advanced southwest to Gavrelle, ready to pause on 2 October and then push outposts southwards. The French moved south in parallel brigade columns, as the Germans moved west in divisional columns. Bavarian Reserve Infantry Brigade 9 of the 5th Bavarian Reserve Division reached Esquerchin and set flank guards facing north, before advancing on Query-la-Motte, when French artillery near Aisne pinned down the German infantry and destroyed a German artillery battery. French infantry then attacked from Drocourt and forced the German columns to deploy and work forward closer to Aisne, to try to overrun the artillery. Bavarian Reserve Infantry Brigade 11 advanced on Beaumont, Drocourt and Bobonard, moving the rearguard round to the right flank, which arrived just in time to meet a French attack from Nlittered. Both German brigades attacked again and captured Aisne, the heights east of Bobonard and Beaumont Station. Later in the evening, Drocourt and Fresmy were captured and Bobonard was entered, being captured by dawn on 3 October. Turning our focus to 3 October, let's explore its key elements. By the morning of 3 October, the German front line ran from Drocourt to Bobonard and Fresmy. To the southeast, Bavarian Reserve Infantry Brigade 9 attack on Neuville was repulsed by small arms and heavy artillery fire from Acqueville. The brigade dug in between Aisne and Neuville. In the 1st Bavarian Reserve Division area to the south, the advance was at first protected on both flanks and advanced to Fresnes unopposed. The advance on Arras continued, supported by artillery moved forward during the night and the Guard, 4th, 7th and 9th Cavalry Divisions in the Scarpe Valley. The cavalry was to cover a westwards move of the Bavarian divisions, the 5th towards Vimy and Thilus and the 1st to Thilus and Street Laurent. The cavalry were slow to move and the Bavarian infantry were held up by attacks from the north, until the cavalry arrived during the afternoon. Bavarian Reserve Infantry Brigade 9 managed to capture Marquette after the 9th Cavalry Division arrived, which enabled the rest of the 5th Bavarian Reserve Division to advance and capture Rouvroy and Acqueville. Round French patrols slowed the advance and the 5th Bavarian Reserve Division put flank guards out on the right for the advance on Gavrelle. French troops in Epée engaged the Germans with small arms and artillery fire, which delayed the Germans until the success of a costly attack against Epée and Neuville. Costly German attacks were made on Bérains, Mercatel and the Arras suburbs of Street Laurent Blangy and Street Nicolas, which were repulsed and forced the Germans to move northwards. An evening attack by 3 battalions on Arleux failed, which left the French position from Arleux to Bailleul and Pointe de Jour intact. More orders arrived to press the advance and an improvised took over flank protection to the north, and responsibility for the advance from Marquette to Avion was ordered to capture Vimy. The flank attack by the French 70th Reserve Division had been repulsed, but the advance reached only Drocourt and Gavrelle instead of Street Laurent and Bailleul. The disorganization in the 5th Bavarian Reserve Division, which had been caused by the urbanist landscape and the vigor of the French defense, was not remedied by the groups and worsened on 4 October. The right flank of Ex-Corps and left flank of the territorial divisions to the south became separated, prompting Castelnau and Maud'huy to recommend a retreat. As we transition to the next segment, let's unravel the mysteries surrounding 4 October and gain a fresh perspective. On 4 October, Joffre made the independent as the 10th Army and told Castelnau to keep the 2nd Army in position, relying on the increasing number of French troops arriving further north to divert German pressure. Foch was appointed as a deputy to Joffre, with responsibility for the northern area of operations, the territorial divisions, the 2nd and 10th Armies, which were combined in the GPN. A gap separated the two 5th Bavarian Reserve Division objectives, and a battalion sent to capture Avion disappeared in the dark. An attack by a 2nd Battalion began at and quickly succeeded. The rest of the brigade advanced soon after but was engaged west of Avion by French infantry and artillery firing from Lens and Givenchy. One battalion reached the Lencheres road but then managed to advance only another before dark. A desperate night attack then captured the wooded hill between Satches and Givenchy before dawn on 5 October. Arrived at dawn, paused at a wood near Livin and then attacked towards a wood now borders of northeast of Satches. A cavalry regiment had moved forward independently to high ground west of Angres by calling out to civilians that they were British cavalry. German troops entered Lens, which had been held by a group of French cyclists and a dismounted brigade of the 5th Cavalry Division. The progress of assisted further south to capture Acqueville before daybreak, despite a determined French defence, and then press on beyond 2 more defence lines was limited. The advance was stopped short of the railway embankment east of Vimy. New orders arrived for the troops to press on, as it was mistakenly believed that the French were withdrawing, but the German infantry made no attempt to advance in daylight, over open ground and without artillery support. Another order arrived to cross the embankment, take the ridge and Telegraph Hill, now Hill 139, to no effect. Later on, after sharing out a large quantity of wine captured at Waubenard, an attack began at and reached the embankment after 30 minutes. The advance continued up the ridge south of Vimy but missed La Folie Hill 140 in the dark and ended up on, but French troops had already retired from Vimy and the hill. Captured Arleux on 4 October, made a costly advance to Willerville, and then it was held up at the railway embankment and the village of Farbus until dark. As the units further north advanced, was able to advance through Farbus and reach around midnight. The 5th Bavarian Reserve Division had managed a considerable advance, despite increasing French resistance, casualties and fatigue, but Vimy Ridge had not been captured apart from. The 1st Bavarian Reserve Division had hardly moved, all its attacks on Bailleul having failed, causing a gap to appear between the divisions. It was hoped that German cavalry divisions would be able to advance on 5 October and that the 7th Cavalry Division would manage to turn the French northern flank. An advance in the north was ordered on Notre Dame de Lorette Hill 165, which took the chapel unopposed. At the rest of concentrated between Angres, Satches and Givenchy. The French artillery bombardment of the Lorette Spur lasted into 1915. As we enter this new chapter, let's navigate the complexities of analysis and unravel its multifaceted nature. The French had been able to use the undamaged railways behind their front to move troops more quickly than the Germans, who had to take long detours, wait for repairs to damaged tracks and replace rolling stock. The French IV Corps moved from Lorraine on 2 September in and had assembled by 6 September. The French had been able to move troops in up to per day and use hundreds of motor vehicles which were coordinated by 2 staff officers, Commandant Gerard and Captain Daumink. The French used Belgian and captured German rail wagons and the domestic telephone and telegraph systems. The initiative held by the Germans in August was not recovered as all troop movements to the right flank were piecemeal. Until the end of the siege of Maubeuge, only the single line from Trier to Liege, Brussels, Valenciennes and Cambrai was available and had to be used to supply the German armies on the right, as the Sixth Army travelled in the opposite direction, limiting the army to 40 trains a day, which took 4 days to move a corps. Information on German troop movements from wireless interception enabled the French to forestall German moves, but the Germans had to rely on reports from spies, which were frequently wrong. The French resorted to more cautious infantry tactics, using cover to reduce casualties and a centralist system of control, as the German army commanders followed contradictory plans. The French did not need quickly to obtain a decisive result and could concentrate on preserving the French army. As we enter this new phase, let's navigate the complexities of October and discover its practical applications. Foch arrived on 5 October, in command of all French forces north of the Oise, and ordered the 10th Army to end the fighting, withdrawal and regain the initiative. Hasty counter-attacks were made from the area of La Folie, which quickly bogged down, and soon after, parties of French troops were seen retreating from Vimy Ridge, through Neuville-Saint-Vaast, Neuville and south of Carency. The Bavarians were ordered to pursue the French to a line from Satches to Carency and Camblain, while advanced through Neuville-Saint-Vaast and Street-Oeil to Ac. As soon as the moves began, French artillery fire slowed the advance and was stopped at the east end of Carency and the higher ground to the south. Dug in around Satches and on the Lorette Spur, the infantry and cavalry dug in until the arrival of the 7th Cavalry Division. As the German advance had closed on Arras, the French defence became more determined, and the Bavarians were counter-attacked all day. At Zouvres made a costly counter-attack north of Thulis, and when the Bavarians attempted to advance they were engaged from the village. Eventually, The capture of Fils enabled Neuville to be occupied unopposed, but a new French defensive position was found at La Targette. The 1st Bavarian Reserve Division managed to capture Bailleul, which brought both divisions level late on 5 October, ready for a broader front advance in the morning. Was ordered to attack towards Camblain again, protected on the northern flank by cavalry. The Lorette spur was a dominating position, which gave an occupant observation over much of the locality, but the steep, wooded slopes gave cover to an attacker and artillery was difficult to bring to bear. The French could also fire on the spur from 3 sides. Should the Bavarians withdraw, the area of Ablain, Carency and Satches would become untenable and a retirement was rejected. A further advance was not possible, because the cavalry had not arrived by 6 October and the 1st Bavarian Reserve Division was still further back around Bailleul and Pointe de Joux. The Corps headquarters sent new orders for the 5th Division to become a flank guard in the north, as all available troops attacked Arras. Was to mask Ablain and cut the roads from the north. Was to attack to the south, capture the crossroads north of Écurie and advance on Arras. The 1st Division was to attack at the same time from the west to a line from Roquelincourt to Street Laurent as Ivy Corps and the Garde Corps attacked from the south. The 7th and 9th Cavalry Divisions operating north of the Lorette spur managed to hold on against probing attacks and bombardments from the north, south, west and south. The attack towards Arras faltered against increasing French resistance, a flank guard at Ablain having been attacked all day from the northwest and southwest. Troops were taken from Satches and the Lorette spur to cover the gap from Carency to La Targette until dark. On 6 October, attacked Street Ailly through La Targette, which the French had abandoned but afterwards forced under cover by French troops near Berthonville Farm, until heavy howitzers near La Folie managed to hit the Street Ailly church tower and positions around the farm. The Bavarians were redirected southwards towards Écurie and were then stopped near La Targette for the rest of the day by French troops well dug in at Maison Blanche. A rumour that German troops were in Arras led to orders to attack again and a cancellation 2 hours later. In the 1st Bavarian Reserve Division area, the troops west of Bailleul and Fils attacked Roquelincourt but were slowed on open ground by French artillery fire and 2 days without food and water. The 1st Division commander ordered that the attack must continue to keep up with the 5th Division, but by night the division was still short of Roquelincourt and dispersed over a wide area, which the French exploited to get behind parties of troops and inflict many casualties. After dark the Bavarians managed to inch forward to within of Roquelincourt and of a different Maison Blanche. In this section, we'll be peeling back the layers of October to reveal its true essence. Ambitious orders were issued for 7 October to advance north of Arras to Petit-Servin, Mont Street Ailly and Moreuil, supported by attacks from the east by the 1st Bavarian Reserve Division, Ivy Corps from the southeast and the Garde Corps from the south. The arrival of the ex-Ivy Corps to the north ended the chronic problem of flank security, but to the south exhaustion and the need to close gaps and resist French counter-attacks from reinforcements which arrived during the day. In the north managed to repulse French attacks but could not advance and was severely bombarded on the Lorette spur, which forced some temporary retirements towards Carency. Failed to get forward to Street Ailly and no advance was possible towards Roquelincourt, after the French 10th Army had issued orders to X-Corps and the 77th Division to hold their positions at all costs. On 8 October, a special attack on Roquelincourt was ordered to prepare the way for another outflanking move from the north. Despite elaborate arrangements, only a small amount of ground along the Bailleul road was taken and the attack on Roquelincourt was abandoned as a costly failure, 1 battalion being reduced to attacks on the Lorette spur towards Petit-Séverin failed and attacks by the 13th Division of ex-Ivy Corps in the north made no progress. During the afternoon the French made a general attack from Ablain to Neuville which forced the Germans and Bavarians to rush forward every spare man to plug gaps between units. At Carency the French 43rd Division took the west end and was then stopped by reinforcements rushed from Vimy who stabilised the front and took prisoner of the 31st Chasseurs. The 13th Division reached the Lorette Spur and dug in, which by nightfall meant that the German positions ran from Enoulet to the Spur, Bois de Balbany, west of Ablain, Coency, La Target, Maison Blanche, Neuville, north of Écurie, east of Rocquincourt, and south to the Scarpe Valley. These positions marked the end of the Battle of Maneuver in the area. Local attempts to advance were defeated by the French, and by 9 October, German reliefs in line were underway to reorganize the mixture of units, which took a week. As we enter this new phase, let's uncover the impact of First Battle of Flanders on our broader topic. To the north, the I Cavalry Corps attacked between Lens and Lille and were quickly repulsed and forced back behind the Lorette Spur. Next day, the cavalry was attacked by the first troops of the French XXI Corps advancing from Thun. On 8 October, the German XIV Corps arrived from Mons and took over from the cavalry, which were sent north to resume their attack from La Bassée and Armentières. The IV Cavalry Corps had moved north of Lille and on 8 October reached Ypres and then turned southwest towards Hazebrouck, where they were met by the new French I Cavalry Corps General Antoine Dimitri and forced to retire to Bailleul. By 9 October, the defensive lines established on the Aisne in September had been extended to the west and north to within of Dunkirk and the North Sea coast. On 3 October, Joffre formed the 10th Army under General de Maud'huy to reinforce his left and prevent its envelopment. The XXI Corps arrived from Champagne and the 13th Division assembled west of Lille. In the next portion, we'll be immersing ourselves in the realm of Lille 1914 and examining its broader implications. The armament of the Lille Fortress Zone in 1914 consisted of, and including shells, of rifle ammunition and guns, which had been sent from Paris. During the Battle of Charleroi 21 August, General Zamade garrisoned the area from Maubeuge to Dunkirk with a line of territorial divisions. The 82nd Division held the area between the Escaut and the Scarpe, with advanced posts at Lille, Delemont and Tournai, just over the Belgian border. The territorials dug in, but on 23 August, the British Expeditionary Force BEF retreated from Mons and the Germans drove the 82nd Territorial Division out of Tournai. The German advance reached Roubaix and Torquay before a counter-attack by the 83rd and 84th Regiments recouped Tournai during the night. Early on 24 August, the 170th Brigade organized the defense of the bridges over the Escaut, but around noon, the territorials were forced back by a German attack. The mayor of Lille requested that the city be declared open, and the Minister of War ordered the garrison to leave the city and move between La Bassée and Aisne-les-Lys. On 25 August, the German First Army reached the outskirts of Lille and General Hermant withdrew the garrison. Maubeuge to the south was defended by, and the Belgian army was still defending Antwerp to the north. On 2 September, German detachments entered Lille and left 3 days later. The town was intermittently occupied by patrols, guarding the right flank of the First Army. After the German retreat from the Marne and the First Battle of the Aisne, the northward maneuver known as the Race for the Sea commenced, and on 3 October, Joffre formed the 10th Army under General de Maud'huy to reinforce the northern flank of the French armies. The 13th Division of XXI Corps arrived from Champagne and detrained to the west of Lille. On the morning of 4 October, chasseur battalions of the 13th Division moved to positions north and east of Lille. The 4th Chasseur Battalion advanced towards the suburb of Fives, but encountered by small arms fire as it left the Lille ramparts. The chasseurs drove the Germans back from the railway station and fortifications, taking several prisoners and some machine guns. North of the town, the French met more German patrols near Wombrechies and Marquette, and the 7th Cavalry Division skirmished in the neighborhood of Fouquet. The new Lille garrison, consisting of territorial and Algerian mounted troops, took post to the south at Fouquet and Wattignies, linking with the rest of the 13th Division at Ronchin. A German attack reached the railway, and on 5 October, a French counter-attack recaptured Fives, Hellems, Flers, the fort of Mons en Baal and Ronchin to the west. Cavalry engagement took place along the Ypres Canal. On 6 October, The 13th Division left two Chasseur battalions at Lille as XX Corps moved south towards Artois, and French cavalry near Delemont repulsed a German attack. On 7 October, the Chasseur battalions were withdrawn and the defense of Lille reverted to the territorial and Algerian troops. From the I Cavalry Corps engaged German troops between Aisne-les-Lys and Armentières but failed to reopen the road to Lille. On 9 October, a German aeroplane appeared over Lille and dropped 2 bombs on the General Post Office. In the afternoon, all men from ordered to the Bethune Gate, with instructions to leave Lille immediately. Civilians from Lille, Torquay, Roubaix and neighbouring villages, left on foot for Dunkirk and Gravelines. Several died on the way of exhaustion and others were taken prisoners by German Uhlans. The last train left Lille at dawn on 10 October, an hour after German artillery had begun to fire on the neighbourhood of the station, prefecture and the Palais des Beaux-Arts. On 11 October, after a lull since the previous afternoon, the bombardment resumed until and then continued intermittently. On 12 October, the garrison capitulated. Bywin had been killed, many fires had been started and the vicinity of the railway station was destroyed. 5 companies of Bavarian troops entered the town, followed throughout the day by cavalry, artillery and more infantry. Let's now shift our focus to First Battle of Artois and explore the ways in which it shapes our perspective. After studying the possibilities for an offensive, the Operations Bureau of the French Army recommended to Joffre d'Or offensive, with attacks in Artois and Champagne, to crush the German salient in France. Despite shortages of equipment, artillery and ammunition, which led Joffre to doubt that a decisive success could be obtained, it was impossible to allow the Germans to concentrate their forces in Russia. Principal attacks were to be made in Artois by the 10th Army towards Cambrai and by the 4th Army in Champagne, with supporting attacks elsewhere. Their objectives were to deny the Germans an opportunity to move troops and to break through in several places, to force the Germans to retreat. The 10th Army was to capture Vimy Ridge, to dominate the Douai plain and induce a German retirement. From north to south, XXI Corps was to break through at Souches and capture Givenchy. XXXII Corps was to capture the ridge and south. X Corps would attack northeastwards from Arras, to cover the southern flank of XXXII Corps. Artillery support for the offensive would consist of including by 25 December. As a deception, the French sapped forward to reduce the width of no man's land at all places on the western front where an attack was feasible. Foch ordered Maud'huy to slow the planned pace of the offensive of successive attacks on several days to ensure artillery support for the infantry, which was intended to substitute shells for lives. The offensive was fought from but despite the careful preparations achieved little. Artillery support was insufficient and rains turned the battlefield into a morass. XXI Corps managed a short advance and captured about of the German front trench, and X Corps captured a small area of ground near Arras. The XXXII Corps attack began next day and was equally frustrated by the German defense. Next day the Corps concentrated its attack on Carency to little effect until 27 December, when a front-line trench was captured, only for most to be lost to a German counter-attack. Bad weather then delayed the offensive, and on 5 January, Joffre decided to reinforce the 4th Army, where the First Battle of Champagne had been more successful, with troops from the 10th Army, the offensive in Artois being officially ended on 13 January. Your feedback helps me improve, so please take a moment to leave a comment or review.